What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats and our movement plays of the week for the 2023 National Football League season. And I'm pretty excited about this week's selection. I don't think it's going to come as any shock or surprise to most people out there if you watch my social media or if you even rewind back to the spring and prior to the 2023 NFL draft, that my favorite mover in the entire draft, Bijan Robinson of the University of Texas, has found himself already featured here on Football Beyond the Stats in our movement plays of the week in week 2 in his rookie campaign. Like we talked about last week with Christian McCaffrey and what he was able to do, we really want to feature the player's form of life, their authenticity, and who they are as a problem solver. But unlike last week when I unpacked Christian McCaffrey for 5, 6, 7 minutes, whoever the heck knows how long I went for, we're going to get into the play first today. Then we're going to watch it back in slow motion, and we're going to look at how Bijan's form of life, how his ways of being and behaving are expressed within this problem solving. We're going to maybe take a rewind trip back to some of the things that I said back in April before the NFL draft when we do that as well, to feature who he is as a mover that separates him from all others, even amongst the 32 starting NFL running backs. So the play is only 11 seconds or 12 seconds long here. It's in the middle of his big highlight day that he had on Sunday versus the Green Bay Packers. You can see it's the second quarter. It's in Atlanta at home on turf against the Green Bay Packers defense, which has had some tackling issues from a rushing defense, but that shouldn't be held against Bijan for what he's able to do here on this play. We're going to watch this a few times through for those of you who haven't seen it yet. I'm guessing those who haven't, you probably have been living a bit under a rock since Sunday, because this play trended, and rightfully so. I tweeted about it a few times. I posted about it a few times, and so did other NFL pundits, other NFL analysts, because this is special stuff here that you don't just stumble your way upon making people miss and stringing it together in this way. This, guys and gals, is footwork, football speed in context. One more time through here, and then we're going to get in slow motion, kind of talk about how he was able to solve these movement problems, what information he might be picking up, what affordances are there. And as you can see, I can't get enough of this play, and I don't think you guys will be able to either, at least if you appreciate adaptive functional movement skill in sport. So slow motion here. Again, I don't want to beat the dead horse, but I don't think people are really understanding what kind of jump it is, even going from the University of Texas and playing the competition that they do there and excelling there, to being able to do this across an NFL football field or on an NFL football field across these types of contextual problems. Remember, we utilize Nikolai Bernstein's idea of dexterity and movement skill, the ability to solve any emerging movement problem in any situation and in any condition. And of course, these situations where these local movement problems are stacked on top of each other, or really one is able to string together these movement solutions to these continuously emerging movement problems, this is a fascinating scope or skill or scale of analysis that we want to look at the movement behavior on a football field through. So let's just kind of think about these local movement problems. And to my mind, there's probably 3 or 4 that at least we can define or delineate. But remember, this is one continuous problem and solution dynamics, this mutual reciprocal exchange of information that's happening here is continuously unfolding. We don't know where one movement problem ends and another one begins, or where one movement solution really ends or begins, because the perceptions, the cognitions, and the actions that we highlight our attention to here at Football Beyond the Stats from an ecological dynamics framework, they are all intertwined and interwoven. It's not a step-by-step linear process in the way that maybe one would traditionally think. So slow motion here, this is where we're really going to be able to start to see the forest and the trees collectively. Now, I want to start by saying that we want to watch all of the plays that we might analyze through as many different perspectives that we can. So as many different angles. Now we only have it here from the sideline view, but if you have NFL Game Pass or Rewind, that what is traditionally known as Rewind, you can go back and watch it from the sideline view and from the end zone view. I'd highly encourage you to do it because those problems change significantly, or our vantage point on them does as well. But when we look at this, guys and gals, we want to take them not only for face value, but we want to peel apart the layers on what Bijan, with his form of life, might be seeing. What is he perceiving? What information might he be connecting to? And what that might mean for the way that he is going to solve this problem. And of course, we can think about his adaptability here, and I just put that heart on number 55, because again, it's usually the immediate opponent and the space that is in the opponent and or teammates, right, as well as the space that is afforded and what that space affords the person to be able to do. So behaviors afford behaviors, as we always talk about. So 55's behaviors are going to present certain opportunities as well as challenges to the ball carrier in this case. But 55, as he comes in, you can see he's already stumbling out of this interaction with Bijan's teammate that I'm circling here, right? So again, I say that because this is an unpredictable, indeterminate system. And as 55 begins to stumble, and as Bijan receives the ball from Desmond Ridder, you can see that he's already in the midst of this alive movement problem. Here, as he is so finely connected and attuned, as we would say, perceptually sensitive to the informational variables about that movement problem, here the immediate opponent, and they're stumbling, we can see that it seamlessly and is channeling how Bijan might act. I don't want you guys to miss this because, if a guy is pre-planning where he's going to go, he might run right into the path of that oncoming defender, even though that defender is stumbling. But you can see that Bijan, and I wish I could go just to rewind it frame by frame, you can see how tightly coupled this is to when he begins to execute his coiled cutting action to cut it back from right to left, to come to the inside of 55. And then you can see he sort of contorts his body around where 55 is, while still tightly coupling his movement behaviors to find his way through the emerging opportunity to act. And you can see behavior affords behavior. His own teammate sort of stops in his tracks. So he being Bijan, doesn't have more dynamically occurring information to act upon or perceive, right? So kudos to 85 here, stopping his feet. So it gives Bijan, number 7, an easier path to get through this I guess, constantly emerging affordance, right? And you can see 55 is kind of stuck in the mud, is getting posterized here because he was being tripped, but also there's going to be a fixed and frozen degrees of freedom from 55's behaviors here. But look at Bijan's nifty footwork here as he comes through this. And you guys know this is what I do here. If you don't like it, you can stop and go to a different analysis that might not be diving into this as deep. But this is why we see that activities that are done on cones, such as cone drills, activities that might be done where something is scripted or rehearsed, it's done in rote, maybe like an agility ladder, where the behaviors that emerge there or are trained aren't overly applicable or transferable to the footwork that emerges in context. Okay. And if you can't see that through looking at this, like right here, this movement problem, right there, that movement problem, right? Just because it's his teammate doesn't mean that it's not a movement problem that he has to solve. And it's this footwork that is being executed in context that we want to investigate this play through. But now, when he goes through this, you can see here's our second local movement problem. Again, we don't know where any problem ends and another one begins. I want to be transparent and clear with that. This is one continuous problem solving effort. But now he has another player. Let me get, instead of hearting this guy, let me star this guy, and you can't really see him because the yellow blends in, right? We can see Bijan. Now, we don't know when he's perceiving this problem and what information he might be connecting to about that problem and about its contents, right? This opponent and this movement problem. But what we can anticipate is we can look at when he might perceive this guy. And right now he looks to actually be looking probably more beyond. But just because someone has their focal point here, more fixated right out in front, doesn't mean that peripherally he's not going to be taking in certain information along this vista. Okay. Does that make some sense? Hopefully it does, because there's relevant information sources out there that could inform the more skilled perceiver and behavior of successive or simultaneous affordances. There are always simultaneous affordances, meaning multiple ways of acting or behaving, numerous ways or opportunities to act. He could go with, as long as he's perceiving those things. Let me clear that, and I'm still going to draw some more arrows. Imagine that, right? He could actually head in this type of path or direction if he saw, and I'm getting happy with my telestrator here, if he saw this dyadic relationship here that's unfolding between his teammate Kyle Pitts and the defender for the Green Bay Packers. He could act in this way, or at least start acting in a way that would be in accordance to accepting this affordance. Or he could, of course, go in the direction that he is likely to head towards this path or this opening that exists here between this type of interaction. Okay. And I drew that a little bit over Pitts because we have to think about it from Bijan's perspective. This gap to his right or to the left of Pitts and to the left of this immediate opponent, right? But again, this problem is dynamically unfolding. This river is moving. And once this player begins to cut off his path, now who knows what Bijan's intentions were? He could actually just be like kind of a combat martial artist or striker, kind of like pulling someone into his space. And it sort of seems as though that's what he was doing. But remember, skilled intentionality is about remaining open and responsive to a rich landscape of affordances or opportunities to act. So keeping multiple options on the table. And I believe that's exactly what Bijan Robinson, because of his movement skill here, was doing. Let's watch it again in this perspective. I believe that he was keeping affordances open to go in, say, this direction, or this direction, or this direction, depending on what actually was being perceived and acted upon there. So hopefully that is beginning, and I just froze there. Hopefully you guys caught all that. If you didn't, I'm going to have some editing to do. But you can see that then when the defender enters this space that Bijan's behavior sort of drew him into, then Bijan makes a different decision and he acts in a little different fashion. He stays super hyper adaptable to what is really out there and how is that problem behaving. And of course, he just so happens to have really special action capabilities, really special movement tools or strategies, the ability to stop on a dime no matter what speed he's going and no matter how tight that space is constraining him to act. Again, this is football speed, guys and gals. This is game speed. This is footwork in context. And you can see he sort of squares up the defender to a certain degree to give him even a more solidified two-way go. He's just remaining so intentionally open and responsive to whatever might unfold that this is showing an evolved maturity way above and beyond his years. And this is the thing that excites me about Bijan Robinson, and it's only going to get more skillful. It's only going to get more attuned, more sensitive, and ultimately more adaptable and more functional to the complex movement problems that exist in the NFL. So once he gets that guy biting into his space, another posterized opportunity where he makes a guy look silly. He makes a guy commit to that angle and he just whoop, sidesteps around him. Footwork in context. The information there is dynamically unfolding. The problem is alive. In it, movement actions that emerge don't look, feel, act, or behave anything remotely close to what they would during a cone drill execution or during a footwork drill such as an agility ladder. I hope we can all agree upon that, and I hope we can see how silly it might be for us to expect that this type of behavior is actually unfolding from some of those training opportunities. The only way, from my perspective, to really truly train this is in context. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So now, as he begins to, even though he made that guy look silly and he gave that little shimmy, kind of jump cut, kind of a crossover, it's just a molded, blended, modified version of a number of different cutting strategies and another cool adaptable thing about Bijan Robinson. But when he comes up out of that, notice how his eyes are leading the dance. It's this constant dance of information energy exchange, what the problem is offering him, and how he might be able to act in accordance to it. He regains his balance and he's on the gas pedal. But the cool thing about Bijan Robinson is he doesn't rush to get where he's going. Even in the most complex of movement problems, usually within and through traffic, we will see a Bijan Robinson from his form of life really own these movement strategies, really trying to find the most functional and adaptable fit to that problem. We saw him at Texas do exactly that. And because he operates at that speed, very Christian McCaffrey, very Nick Chubb-like in this way, he is able to perceive and select or act upon numerous affordances to act. And I wish we had a little bit more scaled out viewpoint or vantage point now of what Bijan does in this interaction or what is actually unfolding. Let me see if I can get it. Oh, I was really hoping. So you can see where his visual gaze is, or so we can speculate, and what might be out there again, what lies in front of him and beyond him. Now, I will say, just as I said back in the movement breakdown and deep dive on his movement behaviors, there are some times that he misses opportunities in his periphery or his wider periphery, or he misses, I shouldn't say, he misses opportunities, but he misses the information that is out there that would inform him about those opportunities to act or those affordances. This might not be one of those situations, but this is where I could see him standing to improve in the National Football League. But here, when we see this next defender begin to enter the mix, and remember, there's going to be numerous potential informational variables that are going to be at play here that could serve to inform him about his opportunities to act. Okay, let's just highlight a few of them. And we don't know which one he is sensitive and attuned to. We can only point them out and attempt to speculate upon them, especially because right now we see him already beginning to act in a way which would say that he has perceived and selected and has begun to act upon the affordance that he wants, which is going to be this slight cutback back to the inside of this interaction. So again, we can speculate. The angle of this defender, so I already drew that out right here. I'm walking down that line, right? The angle of that defender, and it's his relation or his angle to the angle that Bijan was attempting to go. Okay, that would be one information source that we can think about. We can look at the posture and the kinematics potentially of that didn't draw that very well. I'm getting way too happy with my telestrator here. We can look at the posture and realize that based on his kinematics, based on the way that this guy is moving, he really only has one place that he can go, which is the direction that he's currently headed. For him to stop and put his foot in the ground and attempt to move back in this path where Bijan is now acting, that's a pretty hard sell, right? Like he's committed, he's coming in hot. And that's the other thing. We have angle, we have posture, we have the velocity that this player himself is moving at this path in. Okay, so angle, and now we can't really designate speed here, but I'm talking about it, and then posture. And then finally, we can think about maybe what is lying to the left and to the right of this guy. Yes, there's a gap here. There's also an emerging gap there. And there's also some parties that mean some things to Bijan Robinson. Here I'm just putting a bunch of stars on his teammate here. He's got a buddy to help him. And then we can think about the most skilled behaviors, the most skilled movers, Barry Sanders, Marshall Faulk, LaDainian Tomlinson. These types of guys are not just looking to the immediate. They are looking beyond. And we can't see what's out there from Bijan's vantage point. And we don't know if he's attending to it. But when I say beyond, I'm talking about all of this that's occurring way back here and way off the screen. Okay? I'm pointing off the screen here now, guys and gals. What is out here? What lies beyond? And this is the success of affordances or opportunities that Bijan might be able to utilize in order to act upon, right? I know this is complex. There's numerous interacting component parts, and no two problems are ever the same, but we have to think about what he might be connected to, and as he executes this really sharp movement strategy, this really sharp crossover cut, to go from right to left with his left leg as his inside foot. You can see it's planted and decelerating right now for him to move back inside in this direction. Not many people are making this cut at this speed after committing to go in this direction. I understand that this is still an action capability, sort of as we talked about with McCaffrey last week, never separating actions from perception. In order to perceive those affordances, one must be able to act upon them. Most humans are not doing that. Okay. Most humans are not able to execute that movement strategy under that contextual situation that we see right there. But the great thing about Bijan Robinson is he's not locked in to any given way of acting because his movement toolbox is abundance. It has abundance. It's wide open. And he is not committed to acting in a certain way. Let's watch it in its entirety in slow motion now. Hopefully, some of the things that I pointed out are some of the things that could or potentially would make sense to your own personal analysis of this. Also, okay, a few things I want to talk about now. His movement form of life. Okay, we talked about his ways of being and acting, right? I'm trying to pull this back up here now. His ways of being at the University of Texas. This looks a lot like the way he behaved at the University of Texas. Now, I had said in the spring, what will happen when he gets it within the complexity of the movement problems in the NFL? Because guys are faster, guys are more capable, guys have a different level of skill and attunement. Tacticians will change the amount of space that it's afforded to them. So far, like Saquon Barkley in 2018, and I made a few comparisons between Saquon in 2018 and Bijan in 2023, back in the pre-draft analysis. But like with that situation, we see here that most of this movement skill, most of this attunement and adaptability is highly transferable. His form of life, he moves at ownership speed. The movement toolbox, nothing is off the table until he truly makes a decisive action. And when he acts decisively, he stays adaptable. He stays water-like. He's constantly trying to find the most functional fit to solve that emerging movement problem. He's not overly committed to the way of acting. And then also this ability to string together movement strategies and solutions that were proven from the very early days at Texas. And if you go back and watch any of his high school film back from Arizona, you're going to see the same thing when he amassed something like 7,000 yards. But you can see his form of life, just like Christian McCaffrey last week, living and breathing in front of us. So how could we go upon training this? You know, I was highly critical of change of direction drills, cone drills, footwork drills, things that traditionally people do. The way to train this, like I mentioned earlier, is in context. And guys and gals, if you're new here, I've talked a lot about the types of activities that we might use in our learning environment to attempt to facilitate and channel this type of movement behavior. I want to take us to this interaction right here and really what's about to unfold. I talk a lot about doing more movement problems, emerging movement problems, dynamic movement problems in situ, in context, in traffic. We have a tunnel essentially that we can think about that is created. Let's just imagine if this were a learning activity, guys and gals. Okay. So I'm just drawing out sort of our boundaries of the constraints that we would manipulate. Okay. These are the literal boundaries that we would design. Maybe we're starting this activity on the hash, right where he's, standing right now, and right where he would be entering the movement problem from. Okay. These lines, the boundaries that would create the workspace, that workspace basically being drawn right here. Okay. So maybe it's something like in this square that I drew, or this rectangle rather that I drew, is about, let's just call it 8 to 10 yards wide and 10 to 12 yards long or deep. And what we would do rep to rep, or potentially set to set, is change the boundary workspace size. Okay. We can make it a tighter tunnel, or we could widen it out. We could lengthen it or shorten it. And as you do that, kind of not overly novel or really creative. All you're really trying to do is watch and see what unfolds here for the behaviors of the performer, and you just change where they would enter that space from. Here he was entering it from left to right. You could have them start on the other side. You could have them start coming straight down the pipe. You can leave the ownership or the keys to car to him. And then what you would do with this, again, this shouldn't be rocket science, right? You just start to add parties. I'm now putting stars in that Green Bay Packer defender who's starting about 5 to 7 yards from him. You can have the starting spot, the initial starting condition for him changing. Okay. You can put a dyadic relationship. And I'm going to put hearts here on Kyle Pitts because that is his teammate, right? So that is highly relevant to Bijan. Of course, I'm just showing you where it is and how it is that we could include these highly relevant information sources. It's not all that difficult, guys and gals. We can set up slices or snippets of the game in this way that present alive movement problems for the performer to solve. Then we can have another packer or defender. So right now, with the way it looks, depending if we're including this guy who could re-enter the mix also if we wanted to, it might be a 2v3, okay? Bijan and Pitts, a defender, and then another defender entering in the back. That is a typical situation that we might set up. Or it could be a 2v2. Bijan, his teammate, 2 defenders. Having all of those starting conditions literally change rep to rep is going to change the nature of that alive movement problem that needs to be solved. And then, of course, if we wanted to include this, so it unfolds similarly to that, which what is going to unfold here, another defender, and then ultimately another teammate entering the workspace from the back end of this movement problem. It really depends on what you're seeing from your respective player that you are entrusted with. It might not be Bijan, but in this case, we obviously are featuring him in this movement problem. It could be the defenders themselves, linebacker, defensive back, maybe a defensive end who needs to move in space. Okay. It could be for the tight end and of trying to facilitate and channel their ability to block more functionally. I hope you guys see where I'm going with this. These are contextual, representative, alive movement problems and the constraints that you can manipulate around it that would hopefully and potentially facilitate the movement behavior that we see unfold here. And then, of course, we got to give the keys to the car over to that performer, over to that player, and allow him to go upon solving that problem in a highly authentic and adaptable way that matches his form of life. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't attempt to educate his attention and his intention in certain ways. We definitely would. But we have to start with immersing them in alive movement problems and hope that that's going to channel some different movement behaviors from that performer. Hopefully all of that makes some sense. There was a mouthful and there was a bunch to dive into here today. I understand that. Hopefully you're kind of seeing a little bit of the light. If you don't, take a peek at maybe some of the past movement plays of the week. Take a peek at the movement problem-solving form of life blog post that I presented to all of you a few weeks ago on Football Beyond the Stats. I think it'll get you thinking about viewing the movement behavior that we view on a football field or anywhere on any sport, in any sporting arena or in life as a whole through this type of lens. So for Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, this is another Football Beyond the Stats movement play of the week. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up, comment in the section below, and I will see you guys again in week 3.